it's all just a bunch of AMVs. It's just a bunch of AMVs.
I forgot. Yeah, you were part of that hellscape that was anime.
Hey man, some of these shit,
videos.
Bro. But like some of these be hitting with the views. Like,
I mean, yeah,
hell, like just like slight humble flex. But like some of these, for me, this is a lot. It's like 25K, 28K. Like, I'm like, damn.
And not a dime saw because of copyright shit.
Yeah, not a dime saw because of copyright claim, which is appropriate. It's fine. I completely understand.
Oh yeah. But at the same time, you put a lot of work into that Nirvana Kingdom Hearts music video. And you kind of deserve some of the credit for both of their popularity at the end of the day. I don't see Kurt Cobain's estate writing you a check.
It was a pro bono job.
It was pro bono. Yeah, you felt bad for Courtney Love, and this one's for you.
As an aside, there's a lot of FGC shit in here too. There's a lot of footage from me chilling and like watching matches back in 2012. And like at Winter Brawl 2K12, like and just matches, off-cam matches on here. I'm like, FGC stuff on here too.
Yeah,
a lot of good stuff. It was like Jay Wong playing like my one homie, or like Chaos, and like my buddy getting like raped in like Soul Calibur 4. A lot of fun stuff on here actually. But in my nostalgia aside, we're not here to talk about nostalgia. I mean, I guess we could if it comes up, but
well, I mean, we got
anime.
We don't even got time for nostalgia. We have a backlog. We've been gone for a little while.
Yeah, no, we've been gone for some time, for multiple reasons. We've both been pretty busy with IRL shit. I didn't even feel like uploading the last podcast we recorded in February.
Yeah, but I don't know what that was about, but hey, we move forward.
We do. But here we are. We're at the midst of March now. March 2021. Coming on the precipice of the spring season, which we'll get into later. But the winter season still trucking along, almost finished up. So we've got a lot of good stuff to talk about. I know that I've been watching a little bit more than you.
Almost exclusively more than me.
Yeah, you've been a little
This season passed me by for a couple of reasons. One in which I was just really not interested in most of what was coming, or most of what was advertised. But like, yeah, it came and went, and you'll give us a little bit of a recap coming up. We'll talk about a few other subjects down the line, but I think we want to advertise that next week we are going to do a bit of a spring upcoming like checklist sort of thing of what's coming out.
For certain, yeah. We'll definitely go ahead and do like a look ahead, give our impressions of maybe premises and maybe some trailers. Excuse me, if we get a chance to go ahead and review some of those. But we'll go ahead and do a look forward next week when we get the chance to kind of really go ahead and digest that. But looking back, seeing what we've got so far, the season's still got like maybe a solid like 2-3 episodes left in it before they all conclude.
Yep.
And for me, I mean, just to shotgun a lot of these out, again, I have been watching Attack on Titan Season 4. And again, I will preface as always, I have not seen anything besides Season 4. So it has been a bit of an interesting ride. Very fun. Very strange. But all the same, a great production. Map is doing a very good job. It definitely feels like the culmination for my friends, for people who are in my vicinity when I'm watching, such as Plural, such as Jeremiah, such as Alex. It's become a ritual to watch it on Sundays when we get the chance. Even though the episodes come out on Friday, I think. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, but you all need to see it pretty much at the same time. This is not like a water cooler thing. This is we all need to sit down. This is a Game of Thrones style thing where we all need to sit down together and experience this together, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, that's
it's
fair.
Pretty fun to experience that with the guys.
There's only one episode left of it coming out, right? Like,
I think it's like 70. I think like 2 or 3 left. It's like it's on the precipice of finishing. And I know that we just had a break as of the date of recording. So this coming week is like an episode that's been long in the wait. So looking forward to see what happens there. I know that the anime, just as a side, also is like ending not exactly how the manga is ending. Yeah, the manga I think is still concluding, or it has concluded in a different fashion, something like that. I'm pretty sure I think it's still going actually. It might be finishing just in a slightly different way.
But that's going to be interesting.
Yeah,
because I've seen a couple of ruminations that people are like, it's ending and it's nowhere near where the manga is ending, and it's like, well, I guess you'll just have to read the manga or something.
Yeah,
like
that or just accept whatever ending they give you. It might be, again, it could be an alternative ending. That's like, you're just gonna have to eat like a Full Metal Alchemist, version 1 sort of type of deal.
Yeah, but they can't redo this show. They can't.
Oh yeah. So but here's the thing: they're gonna just put out what you get. So if it's like Game of Thrones, where it's like the ending kind of spoils a little bit of the experience, it'll be okay because the ride was so good. Like the journey up until this point has been quite fun for Attack on Titan, and I've only watched the season 4, so
yeah. Oh, that was kind of my analysis before going in. Like, I haven't kept up with this final season, but like, I was going in saying like, listen, I don't even care what the answer is at this point. The journey itself has been fun as it is, and the characters are great. Like, the only way they could make it bad is if like they just destroyed every character arc that had happened ever. Yeah. Which could happen, everything. But like, I don't see that happening. But
yeah, so with
it's a solid recommendation I'm hearing.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
definitely. Continuing to recommend Attack on Titan if you haven't seen it yet, and including myself. But yeah, no, I haven't. Besides that, for this season, I haven't been keeping up with Promised Neverland. I definitely should. I watched like the first 2 or 3 from the season, and then I just kind of fell off. Not for lack of interest, just life. But I will definitely return to that. It was enjoyable from what I saw. Horimiya has been a big one we've been watching, which is done by the same studio actually as Promised Neverland. Now I think about it, Cloverworks.
Okay, yeah, Cloverworks is fairly solid.
Yeah,
like you don't usually want them to do like too much action, but like they can animate faces well.
Yeah,
they can animate faces very well.
And they do pretty fun. Those are pretty diametric as far as anime are concerned. Like one's like a sort of psychological sci-fi sort of mystery shonen genre, and the other one's like Horimiya, that is like a slice of life comedy romance.
Oh, okay, that's fun.
But yeah, it's a very mellifluous, light, fun, very easy to watch at any given time.
What is Horimiya? Like I've not heard of it just yet.
I think I mentioned it before, but yeah, Horimiya is like it's just like a rom-com. It's a very easy to watch slice of life between like these two high schoolers. The title is like a mixture of their names. The girl's name is Kyoko Hori, and the dude's name is Izumi Miyamura. And so like her last name Hori, his name Miyamura, so like Horimiya. And so they're like sort of the titular couple at the center of this and it's a lot of just kind of there's a lot of character, I don't know if it's even yet, but like focuses on like a lot of the main cast, like the main, I would say like 9 or 10 characters, including the main 2, of course. And it's sort of like understanding the how should I say, the things underneath the surface. Like you have your initial impression, or maybe your first impression of someone after getting to know them, and then like maybe down the line later in life they've developed into someone differently, or maybe like there's just something more to a person. But there's a lot of just like changing perceptions, it seems like, of people around you, because like the main character, I say the dude, I guess I should say, has always had this air of standoffishness. I think I mentioned it. I'm pretty sure I mentioned this to you, where he like has like long hair and has the glasses, and people think like he's like a loner otaku, but really he just has the long hair and wears like the long sleeve jackets all the time to cover like his tats and piercings, because like he's a hard body.
Right. Yeah, I'm starting to remember
that shit. Yeah. And they're like, oh, and like after a while, like all the girls realize like, oh, he's hot. And like,
oh, he's not a gross, ugly otaku. He's really just a punk of society, or whatever they call it.
He's just a hidden himbo underneath all the hair and shit.
The himbos. He has an OnlyFans.
Yeah, right. You just don't know about it.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, that's been an easy watch. It's been fun. I haven't kept up explicitly with every episode, but when I do see it at the house, I do enjoy it. It's just it's always entertaining from a very again, light and like non-committal perspective, but it is insightful for those people who really enjoy slice of life. Besides that, Jobless Reincarnation, haven't got back to that. Dr. Stone has been fun. It's been very solid, but I knew it'd be solid because I read up to this point in the manga, so it's been realized very well. I've been really enjoying that. Good to see Slime return finally for season 2, and that's been pretty good as well. As far as like one of the few isekai that I approve of. it's a short list and it's on it. So
that's fair. I feel like you guys tried to get me into slime, and I feel like it degenerated very quickly into pseudo harem territory. Like,
it definitely like floats
fairly
into
quickly, and I was like, well, like guys, like you need to escape this, right? For me at least. Like it cannot just be a harem. It needs to be something a little more substancy.
It gets better, and it's not all harem. And I'll say that I think that as far as isekai with harem in them, it's definitely lighter than most that I can imagine. Because I could think of like 6 right now that are.
I mean, at the end of the day, most of them just evolve to it. Like even Konosuba has like that harem.
Konosuba's even way worse than I think.
Right, but it's so comedic about it and so satirical about it that it's like it almost like goes in on itself. Mm-hmm. Although even then, the second season and the movie to a degree kind of try to play to that fan base a bit more, and that's what kind of turned me off on the second season and movie itself. But regardless.
Yeah. Speaking of movie, I was looking forward to seeing the Demon Slayer movie because I know that's coming out in America finally next month in April of 2021. Fucking finally!
Is that coming to theaters or just like digital streaming service?
Yeah, theaters.
Oof. Okay. See how that goes.
Look, man, I'm trying to get back in the movie theater. Like as things get better-ish, with at least from a cases by cases standpoint. I know personally, a lot of people in my life, in my circle, that have been either vaccinated once or twice finally. Mm-hmm. It's good to hear about that being more normalized. Even last night, I went to the Sixers game for the first time in a year. So, not to make this too heavy with IRL pressure, but I think that going to the movie theater hopefully will be more normal by year's end. But obviously, not so much. But I'm still gonna go personally. Okay. With obviously all of the
there's gonna be the benefit of hopefully there being less people there in general.
I mean, there's not like there was gonna be a huge crowd anyway. I mean, for Demon Slayer, there probably would have been like
Demon Slayer. I thought you said that like Bunny Senpai even that movie
was packed.
Yeah,
Bunny Senpai was full theater.
Yeah, that being said, it was even more limited screening, wasn't it? Like
I think so. For the Bunny Senpai movie, I remember. I'm not sure. I think there was only like maybe from what I knew, like 2 or 3 showings, like day wise. Like there's only going to be like 2-3 days, and that was going to be it.
Right.
And so I remember going to see that in Philly at a movie theater that I think is closed now due to COVID, unfortunately, off of Penn's Landing. Yeah. And it was me, and Katsu, and we went down there, and it was just all the way to the brim. Like we were in the back.
That's what I mean. So if Bunny Senpai can pull out the numbers, I'm sure Demon Slayer can do the same.
Oh yeah, for
sure. in a pre-crisis world. I don't know about post-crisis, but
yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that, and just to see what the theater experience could be, and will be like. So we'll see when that pops out, because I don't think that it's going to any streaming services. So I'm pretty sure that's your only option. So, if you want to see it, just be safe about it, of course. Mm-hmm. That aside, I know we'd mentioned before the call, before we began this recording, about Megalo returning randomly.
Oh yeah, that was the one thing that we were just like, man, what the fuck?
We're like it's one of those totally out of the blue, like not necessary sequels that just kind of turns the head,
It's like if they said, it's literally like if they said Cowboy Bebop was coming back, and it's like, why are you
not
doing
to that degree,
this?
But it's in the same vein for certain.
I would say it's in the more so for how the show ends and how definitive its ending is, and it's just like you shouldn't be continuing if you want. You can have a side movie, you can have like a limited series or something like that, but it's like that show, for all of its faults, is like, it caps off. Like it says what it wants to say, and that's it. And the point is that everything is finite and everything is limited. And then so for them to announce like, hey, we're back, guys, don't worry. It's literally like,
it definitely is fighting against the themes
we're trying to be Jesus Christ here and come back on the third day. And it's like, are you trying to sell me on the divine afterlife that is Megalo Box? Because I don't think that's a good word there, my friend.
For me, it's like when I think about it, when I watch it, or even hear the idea about it. So like Megalo's about 3 years old now. It came out in 2018.
Yep.
And Megalo was made as like sort of it was, if I remember correctly, it was made in commemoration of like the anniversary of the manga Ashita no Joe, like the Boxer Joe, like the very huge pivotal manga of Boxer Joe in Japanese anime and manga, and like very cool reimagining of the concept of Joe, like this this challenger in this and sort of a cyberpunk, we'll call it esque world, where like everyone's wearing the exoskeletons. And so for them, in exactly what you were saying, where it's like the ending was so definitive, where it's like, well, not really definitive, honestly, it was a little bit vague, but definitive in the messaging.
Well, yeah, the moral was very definitive. It's like there's so much limited time in this life, and you take so much risk trying to get where you want to get, that it's like, you know, it's not Pokemon. You can't just restart and pretend like Ash hasn't aged for the last decade or so. You know what I mean? This show is not meant to be a power fantasy. It plays on the elements of the power fantasy, but like, you know, the staple of it is that like, no, there are real risks here, and your body is taking real hits in this you know, kind of allegory, and so the fact that it just wants to continue just kind of doesn't blow my mind, but it's just like, man, what are you doing?
Yeah. But the thing is,
what are we doing here?
I am curious to see how they want to execute on it, because it definitely looks, how should I say, fairly dignified still. Yeah. But it's like, I'm curious as to how they can pivot that idea, like pivot everything that they achieved with Megalo Box, which again has mixed reviews in and of itself. Like within my own friend group, like I can think of a few people very clearly in my head from Baltimore, if they ever listen to this podcast, that are not fond of Megalo Box, because of how it ended.
Yeah,
they think that the ending is dog shit. But with that aside, how they pivot from there to something new and possibly better and or more fulfilling, or just as fulfilling, depending on how much you enjoyed Megalo Box Season 1. It will be interesting. This whole 7 years later nomad life, as they're titling it. So we're gonna see if they can make something interesting out of it. I'm always for that type of story, but like even then, Joe's not even that old. I mean, he's old for like an athlete, you know, once you get into like your late 30s,
I mean,
maybe early
when
40s.
you're a boxer in a world of like mechanical fighting, you think that you need to be in a real prime shape to do that. But I don't know.
Of course, I agree. yeah. I'm just
we're gonna Rocky Balboa this bitch. We're gonna keep pushing him until we have to make him have a protege of some sort. And
we'll see. And then the kid who's like, you know, that he picks up, you know, in the first season with the old man, he'll be the next Joe. But
exactly.
Either way, I'm looking forward to just seeing whatever they're able to spew out. But I'm not sure. I forget when the premiere date for Megalo Box Season 2 is, but I know it's coming soonish, so we'll keep an eye out for that. I think it's obviously this year, but I don't remember when. I think it's April. It's next month, I think. Actually, it's really soon.
Okay, yeah, we'll have that and all the other spring season summarizations for you next week.
Yep. You've been mostly gaming, right?
Yeah, I've been mostly gaming. Yeah, speaking of unnecessary sequels and shit like that, I really only dived into like 2 games. One is Persona 5 Strikers, which came out for basically everything. It is the official sequel to Persona 5, the original, and that on Switch. And also I went backwards to the Yakuza 1 remake, Yakuza Kiwami, which is out on PS4, PS5, and I think it's on PC nowadays, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, like it's funny going back to both of those, because Persona 5 is of course a turn-based JRPG. Strikers, meanwhile, is a like Kingdom Hearts cross Musou style real-time action game, using those like RPG elements in it. Meanwhile, Yakuza 7, the most recent Yakuza, is also a turn-based RPG that was originally a action-based RPG from the original Yakuza series. So like we're having a little inverse situation going on right now. over at Sega Incorporated, which Atlas is a part of course. But yeah, so both are interesting. Where to start with, Persona 5 Strikers, you didn't get through all of Persona, right? You didn't finish Persona 5.
No, I still am kind of rocking through it. I'm not nearly, obviously, at a continuous pace. I remember we'd spoken on it previously in other podcasts, but I have not been playing a whole lot, unfortunately.
No,
recently.
okay.
But no, I've not finished it. Yeah, no.
But you got pretty far, and you got the gist of like new party member, defeat the evil person, revelation, so on and so forth.
Yeah. No, I played far enough to get the premise. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Persona 5 Strikers is in a weird spot where it's like, it is truly a sequel, and there are basically only like 2 new cast members, and they are like they are side characters. They are not like part of the crew. And so you have like, it's like showing up to it really is showing up to a new game with like 8 cast members that all know each other and have no character arc, because they're all developed at this point. So like you start, and right away it's like, okay, action game, here are the basic mechanics. Cool, got it. Okay, here's how each of them work individually, like, because you can control all 8 of them. And so it's a little overwhelming in the beginning, especially because it has that Muso element. So there's like a million characters on screen. A lot of the action is crowd control, and how you can either stun enemies, attack them in masses, or just group them in a way that they can't just like clobber all over you. So the pace is very frantic and very hype and very like fast pace action, fast reward, fast risk. But what's weird about that is that you get a taste of that in the first 5 minutes, just like in Persona 5. There's like an intro, there's a mise en scène intro where you're battling, and it shows you the basic mechanics, and then it goes back to the actual start of the plot, and there's like a 2-hour plot dump before you get into the gameplay.
How about that?
Which is like, so the thing with Persona 5, the OG, I'm going to call Persona 5 just Persona 5, and then Strikers Persona 5S, or I'll just call it Strikers. Persona 5, it was a mixture of a turn-based RPG / dungeon crawler / more or less like a life sim or dating sim, if you would, where half of your game was managing the dungeon crawling RPG. That also coincided, and you had limited resources there, and that coincided with the day-to-day life sim, where you had to manage your social links, you had to manage your inventory and your resources, so that you wouldn't be, underdeveloped for the dungeon aspect. And the two kind of flowed into each other, because you got money from the dungeon, and then you would spend money outside, which would give you more free time to spend with your friends, as opposed to just grinding. And it kind of flowed into each other really well, I think. And I think that's why the game kind of works. But in Strikers, time doesn't flow. In a dungeon, you still have very limited resources. Like, you run out of magic really fast, and it sucks because magic's really strong in that game. So strong that the first thing you want to do is level up your combo so that they automatically do magic, so it doesn't cost you your resources. But it's not for the sake of an overall timer. It's just for the sake of your own patience, because if you decide that you're out of resources and you have to leave the dungeon, you refill all your health and magic when you leave the dungeon, but time doesn't move forward. The only thing that happens is that you have to go through 2 loading screens in between the two. And so it's easier it's technically easier, but at the same time it's more, I find it more frustrating because of that. There's less to think about. It's really just it really is more so about the grind, to the point that I just turned down the difficulty, because I was just like, I don't want to keep doing this. I don't want to keep jumping back and forth without because the balance is basically, it's still based around these resources, but the resources don't have a tangible like impact on the gameplay. It's just how much time do you want to spend on this game? And I'm like, you guys already had 2 hours of expository dialogue that wasn't all that enticing to begin with. Like the new villain is interesting. And it's nice to see the old cast members. Like, depending on how much you really love the cast, like, you'll either love this or feel lukewarm about it. But like, again, they're all developed, so they're all already like, it's like watching the 8th season of Friends, where you already know the chemistry, you already know the jokes that are going to go back and forth. It's not as like butchered as stuff like the Persona 4 spin-offs or the Persona 3 spin-offs, where every character is just their archetype and that's it. The cast are written a little better this time, but overall it's like, it's really clunky, which is weird coming from Persona 5, which works so smooth. Like, they spent so much time just making a very simple game plan work really effectively and really efficiently. So I don't know, if you really loved Persona 5 and you just couldn't get enough of the music and the cast, then pick up Strikers. It's not that hard as an action game, but like, it really is kind of monotonous to a degree, and like, I don't want to say I have to force myself to go back to it, but it's like, it really is kind of one of those things where I have to say, okay, I'm going to play this, and I boot it up, and then there are occasional moments that I'm like, yeah, I'm enjoying myself, and then others that it's just like a valley, and I'm just like, man, what the fuck am I doing with this?
Yeah, I know some people that can just kind of do Muso for a very long time, and
it's better than Muso. I think it's way better than Muso. The action actually feels really nicely weighted and stuff like that. But I think the damage scaling is a little fucked, and I think the resource management is kind of unnecessary for a game that doesn't really demand much of you in terms of resources.
Gotcha.
You know?
Well, I mean, some people love the grind, and either way, as long as the gameplay in and of itself, like when you're in the moment, is fun, that'll probably be enough for most people.
Yeah, it's just another one of those weird spin-offs where when I started playing it, I actually asked myself, like, is this how Atlas is going to move forward with Persona in similar way to Final Fantasy moving into action? But I don't think it should go that way, to be honest.
I sincerely doubt they would, only because I feel like there's a certain with how you describe the flow of how, like, the relationship between the dungeon crawling. Well, one, I feel like Persona in and of itself has become so diametrically defined by its slice of life / like dating sim-esque life. When you're playing as the student, and then how that flows very well, like the synergy between that and the dungeon crawling, and how well known Persona is for being a turn-based fighter. Not that was ever what stopped Final Fantasy from making that transition, but I think that it's doing it more successfully by having that sort of co-opted relationship between the two elements of the game, as opposed to Final Fantasy, where it felt like the turn-based element was just the turn-based element. Outside of it, you're just wandering sort of an overworld, so to speak, and not really getting too much out of that besides resupplying and learning more about the plot, which is why I feel like they wanted to make the gameplay a little bit more dynamic, especially for like a modern audiences, which are more prone to that type of feedback, and like also having Tetsuya Nomura specifically at the helm of 15, having that experience of making Kingdom Hearts, for him in particular, probably was like very influential on seeing how you can blend the two together. Because whenever I played, and as a hard tangent, to Dissidia, like that, I thought that was a weird game to make. I'm like, how are you going to make a fighting game?
Dissidia? Dissidia was
on the first impression, playing it on the PSP.
Yeah.
I thought it was actually great. Like, I thought it was a very fun mixture, melding between like real-time action elements and still having elements of like of RPG, magic and tactical thinking. So I think that is where, and I think Square Enix is more willing to make that experimentation than like. Well,
they have the resources, like,
and I feel like they have the necessity. They're in the
they're playing a different. they're playing a different ball game where it's like where Square Enix has to keep hitting these AAAs. And granted, in recent years they've been more willing to to fund the smaller projects like Project Octopath and
or
Bravely Default, stuff like that. But those are really just side ventures to keep a certain fan base in line. When they really want those big hitters like Final Fantasy VII Remake, 15, 14 in general. And yeah, I think when you go that big and you don't have something that really compels you to stay turn-based RPG, like there's no reason to stay that way. Like I think going into action was the right move for them, and like that's kind of what makes me clap a bit more for Square Enix. The fact that they were able to make a really interesting, like I think 7's action game is fantastic. 7 remakes, that's the best part of that game.
7 can be played either way. Yeah, it's so malleable. Like you can take it into a very turn-based sort of style, and you can play it very it's kind of, I think it does what Dragon Age wanted to do, but more successfully, where you can be in a sort of real-time action scenario, but you can also plan it out methodically, like as if it were turn-based. But I think even more, I don't know, even though the systems are, honestly, if you look at them, near identical, it feels almost a little bit more smoother in 7, so to speak, having played both of them. Like I played all of Inquisition and having played all of 7 Remake, it feels a little bit better.
I mean, I think they just had a lot of experience. Like 15 went full action, like it didn't really have many RPG elements to it.
Yeah, it's full action. Yeah.
And Kingdom Hearts is really, really action. And I think just that kind of experience that the team had kind of helped them really develop something strong. Whereas as a relatively new team, Strikers, even though they had the Muso guys helping them out, it just kind of, it really feels like they have that they're trying to balance two plates at the same time, because that resource management of RPGs just does not factor well into action gameplay unless you really think it out. Like 7 just dumps resources on you and just says like, listen, these moves are either busted as shit and you can only use them once, or they are a integral part of your combo strings, and you need to manage yourself, but you don't need to refuel every battle, because that would be monotonous for an action-based game.
Yeah, I think that Persona.
Whereas Strikers does both, where it's like, okay, these magic spells are an intricate part of your whatchamacallit, crowd control, but you can only get like 2. And it's like, wait, to a session? No, to a fight. And if you run out, hopefully you have some of the limited supplies to recover yourself. And if you don't, well, hopefully you can go through your other cast members. And if you run out of those, then you just have to go back to the hideout and then go back to the. It's just, I don't know. It's clunky as shit, and I can't say I love it.
Yeah. I feel like Strikers is just a feeler, Obviously, you can use this as an opportunity to leverage an IP to try and make a different game, but you can also use this but there's so much. This is a little bit more thought out than I think a pandering experiment. I feel like it's definitely a check to see how people like this type of gameplay mixed with Persona, and then perhaps in the future Atlas may do something a little bit more.
We'll see. I guess it's startling how iffy it is compared to something like the fighting game, the Persona 4 fighting game. Like that came out and that was just solid. And it was like,
Ultimax is good. Yeah.
Ultimax is great, and like this is like halfway between the two in terms of quality. You know what I mean? Like it's a spin-off that just doesn't quite hit right, but I'm gonna go in circles about it. But yeah, so Persona 5 Strikers, not highly recommended, but not unrecommended either. Maybe get it on sale or something. But to quickly move to Yakuza Kiwami, which is kind of the penultimate of that series' gameplay. I know Yakuza 6 was the last action game of that series, but even then, like that team had a weird production line where they did 5, then did 0, which was like the
prologue.
Yeah, essentially it was set in the 80s. It was set before the original game. That game had the biggest amount of new material in it. You played as 2 different characters. Each of them had 3 unique fighting styles and a 4th secret one that you could unlock. That was just basically the original styles. And it added a lot to the game series. And then they decided to reincorporate that into the remakes of 1 and 2. Which is great, but they didn't put that in 6 in the official sequel, which was 6. And so overall, if you're looking for the actual like pinnacle of the Yakuza series, I would say go to 0 and then Kiwami 1 and 2, because like those have the best gameplay of the series. And meanwhile, story is just nothing to those series. Those stories are like soap opera drama crap. And it's fun.
For some people,
it's a lot of fun, but like it's not. I don't think it's the compelling aspect of those games. I think the side missions, the comedy from like certain scenarios, and the characters, specifically Kiryu and Majima to a slightly lesser degree. I know some people will kill me for saying that, but like Majima to a slightly lesser degree are like the main staples of that game series. And like if you didn't have them in those roles or people of similar irk, the game series would just kind of fall apart, because they're really a strong template for all these wacky side stories with a really quote unquote compelling dramatic action series unquote. But to move that all aside, the action in those games is really, really fun. It's probably the best version of a 3D beat 'em up that I've seen in modern gaming. Like it really relies on you constantly getting because like enemy health is like ludicrously huge compared to the damage you output, except for your finishers. Your finishers do like 20 times the amount of damage that your normal attacks do. So the idea is to constantly get people into a rhythm where you can hit them with that finisher or build meter to get a instant finisher. So the idea is not to get stray hits, run away and get stray hits. It's to like keep a rhythm on one guy, or crowd control enough with a different style and item, or or try to bait certain attacks so that you can counter parry and gain heat, and that gives you your instant finisher and stuff like that. So like they really, really kind of nailed it in terms of those mechanics. And that's why it was so kind of weird. I don't know if we even published the podcast that I talked about this, but that was why it was so weird when they went to Yakuza 7 and they went, okay, let's try a turn-based RPG where there is no sense of flow and rhythm. There's just select your attack, select your special. Oh, this is super effective, great, and stuff like that. And that the Yakuza 7 RPG is really, really bare bones. Like it's much more bare bones than anything Atlas has put out, or anything that Square Enix has put out, because there's no real correlation between your strategy and the enemy layout. It's basically like just keep using your strongest tools. That's all it is. And if your resources run out, refill the resources. It's the same problem that Strikers has, where there's so little thought put into the moment-to-moment game plan aside from use your strongest attack. Because there's nothing other than select enemy, select attack. And at least in action games are that too, to a degree. But you at least have that rhythm aspect that gives you a sense of like, okay, I'm learning this game. I'm learning how it works outside of the surface level. And the Yakuza 7 RPG just doesn't have that at all, and I really hope the series returns to that action style that Kiwami 2 and 1 kind of mastered, because I don't know.
And just to clarify, we're talking about like a Dragon, right? Like the
Yakuza, the video game series by Sega. I'm sorry. Yeah, 7 is called Like a Dragon. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's such a weird subtitle because
just want to make sure that was the one.
Because it did the Resident Evil thing where Resident Evil 7 is Resident Evil Biohazard.
Yeah.
No, 7 is called Biohazard, right?
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah.
But in Japan, Resident Evil has always been called Biohazard.
Yeah.
And so when 7 came out there, it was Biohazard Resident Evil. And so Yakuza in Japan is called Like a Dragon. That is what the series is called.
Oh.
And so when you said to me, we're talking about Like a Dragon, I'm like, well, okay, if we're going to be official about the Japanese name, Brando, of course. But I forgot that with 7, they subtitled it the Japanese name Like a Dragon. It's so confusing.
Yeah, for those of you cursed with knowledge.
Yeah, Bloodborne-esque knowledge here of the Yakuza series. But yeah, like... To anybody who picked up 7 or who picked up Like a Dragon and were like, you know, I like the comedic elements, I like some of these characters, but the gameplay is just kind of lukewarm to me. Pick up either Yakuza 0 or Kiwami 2. Because while the characters aren't as quirky and goofy in those games, like they really put an emphasis on the entire cast in 7, aka Like a Dragon, but I don't think it's that effective, to be quite honest. I don't think the cast is all that compelling. Kiwami 1 and Kiwami 2 just have such a solid gameplay structure, and even 0, even though the gameplay is a little looser because they were experimenting with shit, at least the story is a lot of fun there. Like, Zero's story is probably the best in the series. Aside from maybe 4, but that's getting off topic. But anyway, that's just been gaming for me, is looking at weird spin-offs and how you should really just kind of focus on what you do well, in my opinion. Or suffer like Square Enix did and be in combat toil for a while. But I don't know.
Yeah, it's just the growing pains of any system, of anything in life as it changes.
I suppose so,
to
yeah.
suit the times.
Yeah. Oh, I did play one last thing, and I'll briefly mention it. But I played the Mario. So they re-released Super Mario 3D World.
Yeah, I'm really fond of 3D World. Like on Wii U, it's like one
of
those
great
purchases I was like really happy about. Like when I bought it on, like, because I like for my Wii U, I was like, you know, there's not really much to go around on this bitch. But like, and I really wish. I know it's a stupid thing that being remade.
Okay,
I want Nintendo Land remade. I really, really like Nintendo Land, like a lot. Like I'm a huge fucking fan. But anyway, that aside, yeah, 3D World is really fun. Like a really great co-op, really good, just fun level design. Like, I mean, Mario never fucks up, but like,
no,
this is one of those like, I think really underrated 3D Mario games because it was on the Wii U because like no one fucking played it.
Yeah. I mean, it was highly recommended when it came out. Like, to be fair, the Wii U's, it's for the amount of games that came out of it, it has a high success rate in terms of the games that came out. Like that system had a marvelous library, and I wonder if part of it was because they couldn't make too many games for it because it didn't sell that well. But like, yeah, that system had some banger hits. But yeah, to get to the remake. Not a remake, it was just a port, more or less.
Yeah.
The ports, yeah. So that's what I wanted to talk about. Actually, is the DLC that came with it, which was Bowser's Fury. And what it is a giant open world version of those 3D World levels. Like you still have the same mechanics, more or less, but it's just a giant overworld. And it just basically plays like Odyssey, where you just collect, you collect shines, more or less, but like it still plays more like Odyssey. And you just go around the world collecting those shines, and it's like, it's really effective. And there's no loading screens at all. It is one fully connected world. It's not that much, like it's not a $60 purchase, unfortunately, but you do get the port anyway, so but yeah, it is really impressive what they did with with basically side content. that I wouldn't be surprised if this is how Mario plays down the line. Like Odyssey definitely had it in terms of a really open end style like goal system where you just like go from shine to shine to shine, or whatever you want to call it, stars, moons, whatever the term is for that game, but you're just going from one to the other. But this even expands upon it more, where it's like you're going from one to the other and there's no stopping. There's no loading screens. There's no, world to world traveling. It's just go from one place to the next, and the whole overworld's like islands, and your travel system is that little. Do you remember that little water dinosaur that you would go through some levels? So he's there, and you just hop on him, and you just travel from one place to the next. You control him the whole time though, and there's little stuff in between. And I don't know. I thought it was really, really well done. So
I feel like 3D World is the natural evolution of the old school like Mario World, like the 1, 2, and 3. Like I feel like it's the natural evolution of that. Of like the 2D Mario, like into like the 3D environment, whereas like Odyssey obviously is kind of like there is a differentiation now between like the sort of mainstay, call it like, since Mario 64 like singular Mario adventures, 64 Sunshine Galaxy, into Odyssey, Galaxy 2 of course as well. I feel like there was no, between Galaxy and Galaxy 2 there was nothing like that on the Wii U. This was the main Mario game on the Wii U, and this is more in line with, I think, those other like sort of like new Super Mario Bros. Like this is like that, but way better. So I feel like this is sort of in a sort of different classification, so to speak. But it's a
little bit. But right now I think it's finally a bridging of the two. Like there were two timelines. There was the 3D timeline and the 2D timeline. And now it's finally overlapped, where it literally, like, playing this game actually felt like Odyssey DLC. It didn't feel like 3D World DLC.
No, because it plays like a 3D, you play in the 3D environment, so it's not 2D. But I feel like, design-wise, from like an overview standpoint, it kind of plays like the 2D one, like where you kind of go from like stage to stage, so to speak. But the stage
right, that's the original game. But I'm saying the Bowser's Fury DLC, which runs on the same engine, it plays exactly like Odyssey. Yeah, so that's where the overlap is happening, where suddenly it's like, okay, now we're seeing the connection here.
Yeah. So, I'm definitely looking forward to buying the game eventually, because I don't have too much on my Switch, so I feel like that'll be a good purchase.
It's a great purchase. Really, really worth it. Much more worth it than Striker. But anyway,
I digress. I feel like we probably reached peak content for today.
Yeah, sure. Did we want to talk about Strive for a little bit?
Yeah, we can pop that into the final, as the final bit for today. So Guilty Gear Strive. A few weeks ago, we were able to play the open beta finally for this game that will be premiering next month, right? April?
No, right? it got pushed to June. It got delayed.
Oh yeah, delayed. Yep. I forgot that it got delayed.
To fix the lobby system, the tumultuous lobby system.
I digress. But lobby system aside. Did you have a chance to play it in the open beta, right?
I didn't play online. I was too nervous and I was too scared of getting my ass beat. So I just went into training mode and I just played a lot of training matches and looked up a lot of other people's matches, because I would like to. I don't know. This is a really fun, interesting game. This will be my first Guilty Gear that I actually jump into. I've touched Revelator 2 a little bit here and there, but I've never really played any matches for it. But yeah, like, game is nicely paced for me, at least. I'm gonna be curious to hear your opinions and our friends' opinions down the line, because I know some people were like standing on chairs, nervous that Guilty Gear would fall like Street Fighter to a slower pace fighting game.
I mean, it's definitely the case. So here's the
thing.
For me personally.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
When it comes to Guilty Gear Strive, okay, so my experience was a little bit different from your experience. I actually didn't do, well, in the sense of, I didn't do actually a whole lot of online either, so it's similar in that regard, but I mostly played offline matches with a lot of the guys at the house. So, multitude of people playing the game, Alex, plural, Jeremiah, AJ, etc., Rob. And so it had a lot of plenty of offline experimentation in matches. At first, it was a little wonky because like we couldn't get in for that whole one day. So they pushed it another day, so we were like all pissed off about that. But I appreciate it when they were able to extend it for us. And so the whole experience, the gameplay itself is very solid. Obviously, it's there's one thing that Arc System won't fuck up, and that's a very smooth system in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the fact that it's titled Guilty Gear
is a problem.
Is not a problem. We love Guilty Gear. We're all like long.
Oh no,
fans.
I know. Yeah.
The character designs literally godlike. Daisuke, literally a god amongst men when it comes to just hardest working dude in fighting games. Will always shout his ass out. But the obviously the big butt in the room is obviously the slow gameplay. It is obviously far and away the slowest one. And when people kind of compare it to like what's the barometer for me, I don't even think it fully reaches the Street Fighter line. I feel like it's closer to like far closer to Grand Blue than it is to Street Fighter.
Okay. And
there's nothing wrong with that. Arc System also made the Grand Blue fantasy fighting game, and I feel like they took a lot of cues from that. Because it very feels rigid, with the amount of options that you have. Now, I was mostly playing Kai because I main Kai in every Guilty Gear, but I also played a lot of Axel this time around because I think I'm going to play Axel when this game comes out in June. And so the experience was fun. The gameplay was smooth. Like, there was no technical problem. All my only qualms are design standpoint problems and the pacing. And because I feel like they rectified the damage mostly to a point where it's like sort of bearable, or kind of like I can understand how it flows within the, I guess we'll call it like the aesthetic or culture of the game. But when it comes to why I don't like it as opposed to other Guilty Gears, it doesn't feel like it has the depth of gameplay. Like, I'm talking about literally the amount of tactics and options and speed and like required training that it would take to really be successful at playing any other Guilty Gear. And there's a level of fulfillment what comes with those things to have that sort of depth of gameplay. Like, I feel like every character is fairly limited compared to their predecessors, which is hard to shake that perspective. I feel like if you're walking into Guilty Gear for the first time, this is a very approachable, fun, beautiful game, and it should be a really good stepping on point for you. But it's going to be, a weird thing that the advanced class, so to speak, will always be like moving back in time. Like, first going back to Revelator, like R2 and Xrd and all that, to try that, which will be, leaps and bounds faster than Strive. And then if you want to even beyond that, ACR plus R, Accent Core, which is way faster than that too. So
that's going to be the direct competition at this point, because like Rev 2, as good as it is, like, game has shit online. So like it kind of lives, like, fighting games live and breathe online at this point. Not just because of the COVID issues, but like just because of day-to-day, like, more or less day-to-day gaming, like, exists online. Not everybody has not everybody has the luxury of having people directly in their vicinity. And so it's such a shame to hear, because like I'm enjoying watching a bunch of what are we on? Strive, right? Strive.
I enjoy the content too. I watched plenty of people play it. The game is, again, it's still fun. Just for me, when I want to play a game for a long period of time, and like for fighting games, that's going to be like 5 to 6 years at the minimum. Usually going through its life cycle. Like, we're reaching that point with Street Fighter 5. We are definitely way past that for Street Fighter 4. When you play a fighting game and you play it competitively, like we do, to the point where like you're within the real life ecosystem of like the game, where like you're playing around with like human beings through multiple years at tournaments, at locals and stuff like that. The way we experience fighting games, and the culture surrounding it, it's like knowing how that projection will be. I see GG, which has been a long-standing, figure within fighting games, this latest iteration, for me, not being something I would want to invest long-term periods of time to, because I don't see myself, one, having a fulfilling experience trying to beat out like depth into a game that looks and feels pretty shallow right now from a fighting game standpoint.
Okay.
Comparatively to what I know it has and could be.
Mm-hmm.
And to what else is available in the market. Like, I could definitely get a much bigger depth of anime play out of, like, another Arc System game, like Dragon Ball, or, like, you know.
Really?
Or I could go to Under Night In Birth or something like that.
Okay, that's interesting to hear, because like Dragon Ball even has been accused of being like shallow in a couple places.
Because we all have like not higher standards, but like we've been forced to play games that are much faster, like, and not that that's the barometer of a game's fun or success or depth, but there's definitely like Marvel 2 heads gonna look at, or MVC 3 heads are gonna look at Dragon Ball as like the comparing point and being like, this game is slow comparatively, and it is comparatively, but not as a whole as a game, faster than most by far, you know.
Right. Yeah, so that's what I'm kind of wondering if there's ever going to be like a new game I should say, that captures that kind of audience, because I definitely feel like, you know, I'm happy where the FGC is moving and going towards, but I do wonder how many people we've lost going towards a bit more of a player friendly style, you know what I mean? And like even now where Street Fighter 5 is at, like we still get people that bitch constantly about how frustrating the gameplay is, like on both ends, where you get some that are just like, man, it's just not enough, and they're usually the quieter ones, and that's the sadder part, is that they'll disappear because there's just nothing to give them. And then there's the equal other end, where it's like, man, I cannot do these motions, I can't do this, I can't do that, fuck this game. Like, you're never, and I realize that you're never going to be able to satisfy all parties involved, but like, I do have to wonder if there is ever going to be a newer game that will capture people's hearts in terms of executions like the older stuff did. Or if we're just beyond that at this point. Like, developers just said, fuck it at this point.
For me, I know what you're trying to say. Like, striking that balance between approachability and, you know, and we'll call it veteran FGC depth that they want to have.
Yeah.
I think that, and it maybe... For me, like, my favorite fighting game that maybe meets that... not really. I take it back.
Were you going to say Tekken 7?
No.
Okay, because I was like, that is deep as shit.
No. Tekken 7 is not very...
It's not
the more I think about Tekken 7 in that regard, it's not very beginner friendly. No. I was actually going to say another game, but then I also very quickly opted to reconcile that it's not very beginner friendly either, and I was going to say King of Fighters 13.
Yes.
And then I was like, nah, this is not very beginner friendly either. But for me, it definitely hits all the notes that I wanted. Like, as far as the fighting game is concerned, it's probably my favorite fighting game that I can think of. Definitely not my most successful, but definitely my favorite.
It's definitely solid. I'm not a big fan of the cast of that game, more as an aesthetic thing, but like that game is fucking solid in terms of its presentation and even its rhythm. Like, it has a really nice rhythm to it. I don't know. Like, that's like my hope. Unfortunately, I feel like this, if there's any chance of that happening, it would be from the Riot fighting game coming out, because you got what's his name? Got Keats behind it. You got a bunch of big names that are working on it, and like that they could have a cast that is diverse enough that you can have some members that are just like, you know, easier to pick up, much simpler game plan, nothing too technical about them, and you can just do well with them with a little bit of time and effort. And then also like a good portion of the cast that have that difficulty, that have that executional barrier, so that, you know, folks like yourself and others might have something to add to them. But I have to wonder if that in itself is also a recipe for disaster. I just don't know. You know?
Yeah, we'll have to see. But we'll leave it to you, the fighting game developers, to solve this issue.
I suppose so.
Yes, but until then,
solve netcode first, please.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, solve netcode first,
and then we'll get to the gameplay.
Yeah. All right. Well, until then, solve netcode first. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, solve netcode first. And then we'll get to the gameplay. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, solve netcode first. And then we'll get to the gameplay. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, solve netcode first. And then we'll get to the gameplay. Yeah. But I think that's all we got for today. So I mean, it's definitely a hearty amount of conversation. Good to be back.
Yeah.
Good to go ahead and get some of this. Good to hear your voice as always, Chris.
As yours as well.
Thank you, my friend.
Do we want to plug anything before we head out?
Nothing in particular. I mean, obviously, if you guys enjoyed the video, enjoyed the podcast today, we appreciate you if you made it this far. Definitely awesome. If you did enjoy it, please go ahead and hit the like. Comment down if you have any thoughts on anything we talked about today, on the animes, on the video games, all the other good stuff. Subscribe for more content. We'll go ahead and try to keep this channel a little bit more regular, hopefully in the near future. Did you have something you wanted to plug, Chris?
No, just remember we have the Twitter at the Otaku Remix. We'll try to keep that a bit more active. I'll be commentating on Monday nights at the online local when I can. We do have some newer voices coming in, and we do like to sponsor some of the new FGC commentator cast. So if I'm not there, others talents will be. But other than that, yeah, that's pretty much it for us.
Wonderful. Well, in that case, thank you guys for listening as always. Have a good day, have a good life, and we'll see you on the next one.